All right, week 5 college football breakdown here. A rematch from last year's Big 12 championship game. Oklahoma State looking for revenge, traveling to Waco to take on Baylor. This line right at 2.5 towards the home team, the Bears. And in my opinion, is kind of a suspect high total at 56.5. We're going to start out with a side. These teams, the way I rate them, are virtually dead even. If last year's indication, Baylor beat Oklahoma State literally by an inch last year in the Big 12 title. Now, obviously, the styles of these teams have kind of changed a little bit. Maybe you could argue that, factoring in home field, Baylor should be more like a 3.5 point favorite. But from a side perspective, I think this line is dead on. Now, I brought up the total. Obviously, Baylor, in theory, should be an under team. They run very slow. They've got one of the best front fours in college football. They brought literally their entire two deep in their front four defensively back from last year's team. And we've seen them really just be able to assert their will this year, even against the BYUs of the world, even last week against Iowa State's offensive line. Really good front four for Baylor. So with that aspect, you would think they're an under team. We saw that game in Ames last week get to 55, which going into the game, the total was at 45. So definitely exceeded expectations there. Baylor's offense, the way I read it, they have lost some explosiveness from a year ago. They lost some guys on the outside, and I still think that they're a little bit unsettled there. But really, it's at the running back position. Abram Smith last year was a dog. Over 6 yards per carry. He was a linebacker at one point at Baylor, and he just transformed to a running back and, ran for over 6 yards per carry in the Big 12. They haven't been able to replicate that same level of explosiveness from the running back position this year. I think Blake Shapen is an extremely efficient quarterback. He hasn't necessarily proven to me that he can beat teams deep. Baylor did move the ball well last week against Iowa State, and part of me thinks that they could be able to in this matchup as well. We know Oklahoma State lost Jim Knowles, their defensive coordinator, who's now at Ohio State. They also lost Malcolm Rodriguez. If you look at Oklahoma State's defense last year, they were rock solid, and they don't get all those guys back. They have proven to be somewhat vulnerable in their secondary, and I know it hasn't necessarily been exploited yet by Arkansas Pine Bluff or even Arizona State. But if you look at kind of the yards per attempt of some of these quarterbacks, let's not forget, they allowed Central Michigan to put up 22 points in the fourth quarter, put up 44 points overall in that game. Central Michigan threw for 424 yards in that game. So, and actually, if you look back, Emory Jones, when they played in Stillwater earlier this year, 9.3 yards per attempt. So I think there is some area for concern with this Oklahoma State secondary. And I still don't think they've replicated the loss of a guy like Malcolm Rodriguez left yet at that second level. So I'm still a little bit unsettled about this Oklahoma State defense. It doesn't necessarily show up on paper, but, they haven't played anybody yet worthwhile. And Baylor was able to have success against a similar style defense last week and could have that same levels of success here. Oklahoma State with Spencer Sanders, obviously he almost single-handedly lost them that Big 12 title last year, struggled with turnovers mightily in that game. I truly think Mike Gundy is one of the best coaches in America about adjusting to what he has on his roster. Last year's Oklahoma State team didn't take many chances offensively because they knew we had a top 10 defense in America. This year's team is different though. Spencer Sanders has come out throwing the ball a lot more. Haven't really, played a close game through 4 quarters yet. So I'm interested to see how Mike Gundy approaches this game. If I'm him, I'm not going to try to run the ball in this Baylor defense. Spencer Sanders is probably going to have to win this game with his arm. Even with the criticism, even with the pass inconsistency, he's still a fourth-year senior that's played a lot of football. It's never been an issue with talent. He's just had some inopportune turnovers. But if you watch Spencer Sanders, he's plenty capable. We've seen guys in this exact same role. Go look at what Kenny Pickett was doing at Pitt before last year. Nothing special. Go look at Joe Burrow in 2018. Nothing special at LSU. Over time, some of these 4th, 5th-year players switch flips, and that talent really starts to come through. I'm not saying it will, but I'm just saying that this will be a good opportunity to see if it does. With Baylor's offensive efficiency we saw last week and how I think that could translate into this matchup, that's enough for me to stay off this under. Ultimately, that means no play in this game. Could be a great game to watch. The Big 12 is going to be utter chaos this year. A lot of parity in that conference. Think this game should be no different. Great game to watch. Ultimately, won't have a play in this one, though. Before we get out of here, guys, I know you've been staring at the shirt the whole time. If you're wondering how you can look as cool and sexy as me, let me tell you, Proud90.com, unique but very comfortable polos as well. They got t-shirts, hoodies, quarter zips, recently added a ladies line. Proud 90's got all your golf apparel needs. Browse their selection. If you see anything you like at checkout, use code Fordham. It's going to get you 15% off your entire order. Check the description for more information.